Hello, I'm Rachel, and if you're listening, you probably already knew that. I love reading, and even though I work at a bookstore, I realized last year that I wasn't reading as much as I wanted to. So I asked people across my social media sites for a list of books so I could try the relatively easy goal of reading 2 books a month in 2019. I say relatively because I'm a pretty slow reader, and some of these have pushed me pretty hard to keep up with my goal. For the week of the 25th, I'll be reading The Unnoticeables by Robert Brockway, in case you wanted to read along or have read it before and want to come on my show to discuss it. This fortnightly suggestion came from Emma and is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Thanks, Emma. And now, without further ado, after a year of slavery in the salt mines of Andover, Celaena Sardothian was accustomed to being escorted everywhere in shackles and at sword point. Throne of Glass is pure teen fantasy. It's the first book published by Sarah J. Maas and the first in a series which concluded with Book 7 in October 2018. I remember the month because one of my coworkers is a big fan and was probably counting down the days before she could get her hands on a copy. That being said, the book is not written for men, so anytime I see a review that includes the word Mary Sue, I'm overcome with simply how much I do not care about that opinion. Please save it for your long-term video essays on the Abrams-era Star Wars sequels. This is literally a book for teen girls, and it's about the most famous assassin in this particular world. I don't know if you've picked up from the other episodes of this podcast, but I love fantasy. Love the concept. It's my preferred setting for classic D&D. It's historical but wild. And a lot of times, girls are relegated to more historic roles, which are fine if you want your adventurers to have broad shoulders and your maidens to stay in the court or be healers, whatever. But right out the gate, I love the concept of teen girl best assassin. Celaena was raised to be an assassin after her parents' death. She is trained by the best and becomes the best. And she gets caught, unfortunately, and sent to work in the salt mines of this world. Not a long lifespan in that career either, but somehow she makes it long enough for the prince of the country to scoop her and bring her back to compete in a set of trials. At the end of these trials, the winner becomes the king's champion, meant to do his bidding for a few years, and then they're free, which is a great incentive for half the people chosen, because the nobles, in order to win, mostly choose thieves and killers to sponsor as potential champions. And this would be great for Celaena if the king wasn't, 1, the man who threw her into slavery, and 2, just a dick. He's got imperial goals, he's outlawed magic on the continent, and holds to that with force. He's got 2 sons that he's just awful to. There's no point where I hope the protagonist wins because this seems like a good fit for her. And throughout the book, she keeps reminding the audience that, yeah, she lives in the castle and it's nice to have fancy clothes and servants, but she is leaving once the 4 years are up. She's out. The book focuses mainly on the competition. She has to complete certain tasks and beat out the other competitors. These include everything from a version of Capture the Flag to figuring out poisons. Much like any cooking show, the loser has to pack their knives and go home after every competition. All of this is happening, by the way, while some kind of monster is eating the other fighters. Like, partway through the book, someone is found dead with their brains sucked out, and it seems like nothing is really done to deal with this. No extra guards are posted at doors. People can still move through the hallways alone at night. One would think that this would be cause for great alarm, but this happens multiple times and things just keep progressing like normal, which is probably the wildest part of this book to me. True, some of these people are criminals, but they're also fighting to become like the king's big fighter. Like, why would they subject themselves to the possibility of being ripped apart just for that? Anyways, there's also some kind of court intrigue. The prince falls in love with her, and the head of the guard does also sort of fall in love with her. It's kind of unclear. The prince is written very straightforward, but even in the chapters where we follow the captain, His own feelings are not only confusing, but he also keeps coming back to the fact that he's afraid of her because she's, again, the best assassin in the world. It comes down to a fight between her and the other best fighter, who through magic has been taking the strength of the dead competitors. She also gets drugged by a girl at court who's trying to marry the prince, and she still wins this fight. The fights in this book are fairly short, even the other trials warrant a few more pages, but the writing used for the fight scenes is succinct and gives enough of a view of what's happening without having to go into detail that drones on. My favorite part of the book comes at the very end. Throughout the story, we see the relationship between Celaena and the prince develop. He's kind of a player, but she's still into him. They make out a few times. Maas does not shy away from the fact that Celaena is definitely a teenage girl with teenage girl interests. And at the end, when she wins the tournament, the prince says that they can be together, but it's gotta be in secret. And she says, "Nah, I'm pretty much your dad's lackey, and that would be super awkward, so that's gonna be a pass." What just an incredibly baller move. That alone gets 10 out of 10 Rachels. And I think overall, taking into account that this is Maas's first book ever, I'm probably going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. There's not much rereadability factor, and I think that's because the book relies so heavily on intrigue and reveal. It did get me interested in continuing the series though, and when that series spans that many books, the first is mainly the jump point anyways. If you're a fan of, well, half the books I've read for this podcast, I would suggest this book for you as well. Thanks for joining me this week. I hope you get to shatter some glass in 2019. Thanks, and Happy New Year. So here's the deal about the Throne of Glass. I thought it was going to be like a metaphor for like maybe how the kingdom was shattering under the weight of political intrigue, or like a satirical take on the transparency of royalty. Nah, half the castle is just made out of glass. The protag mentions how stupid it is when they first arrive, echoing my exact thoughts on it. Who builds something so structurally unsound? It doesn't make any sense.